Okay, so I tried making this video yesterday and I couldn't get my camera to actually focus. And then when I did get to focus, my battery died. So we're just gonna try this again. Can't believe I have to record this again. So it's been about a week now since Jimmy got traded, and you know, there's like not even months long, the 5 weeks. The 5 weeks turmoil of Jimmy versus the Miami Heat, Jimmy versus Pat Riley is finally over. I always kind of felt like it was going to end in some type of dramatic fashion, maybe ever since maybe like last summer. Because when Jimmy jumped on here and said, after Pat Riley came out on the press release and on a press conference and told Jimmy to yo, shut up if you ain't playing, and on top of that, Jimmy not really getting a contract offer, or at least not getting a contract offer he liked, mixing in with the fact that he just never really committed to Miami after that, everything was pointing in the direction of Jimmy was going to want out. Although I just said that Jimmy Butler, even though I said that Jimmy, I could see that the writing was on the wall for Jimmy Butler in Miami, it's still kind of crazy that it ended in how ugly it got. From claiming Jimmy wasn't trying to claiming that, Jimmy's agent announcing he wanted, Shams reporting that Jimmy wanted to trade on Christmas Day, Jimmy's agent coming out saying that Shams is on the lying thing, Shams pulling out the receipts, Jimmy proving those receipts on a press conference after the game or post-game interview, and pretty much just doing the Shawn Michaels I lost my smile, Pat Riley saying fuck your smile, we ain't trading you, getting suspended, the NBA PA getting involved, having to come back very awkwardly, mind you, publicly shading Pat Riley, claiming to be willing to play for any team and then started rejecting teams, getting suspended again, Pat Riley basically saying Miami will give you money to take Jimmy Butler, and then him getting traded. You would think everything I just said happened over the span of multiple months, but this happened over the span of 5 weeks. It's crazy because Miami should have been the place for Jimmy. For all accounts, he's a workaholic, never run from the grind, and turn up when it matters most type of player, and that is the identity of the Miami Heat. Miami is not for everyone, and although you would think this would be a free agent destination because it's South Beach, good weather, no state income tax, Miami's relatively always been a competitive team, and Miami women, not really, because Miami is one of the strictest environments when it comes to basketball. If you're going there to work. That's what Bam Adebayo told De'Aaron Fox. There was maybe some quiet reports that De'Aaron Fox could favor Miami. Jimmy was the right player with the right mentality and work ethic, and no matter what his time in Miami has and how it ended, his time there has been successful. They never won a championship, but when he signed there in 2019, nobody thought they'd even be really a super competitive team in the first place, and they've made 2 finals. One of them being one of the most impressive runs I've ever seen from a basketball player and from a basketball team. When Jimmy Butler was in Miami, he always made it feel like he was enough for them to go all the way. And they got everything out of it. They got so much out of those playoff runs. Some of the best performances in the playoffs for Miami Heat history involved Jimmy Butler, and this is a team that has had prime LeBron James and prime Dwayne Wade. Even though before Andrew Wiggins played his first game for Miami, I truly believed that nobody should ever wear number 22 again in Miami. That being said, I understand why Pat Riley didn't want to give Jimmy an extension. Jimmy is 35 years old. He's had issues with staying healthy during the regular season, and he's had pure apathy when it comes to the regular season. On top of the new tax rules for teams that make banking on guys like Jimmy, like those, second or third tier star players, especially ones that are older. And in the case of Jimmy Butler, who's making $49 million and is looking for a contract extension because this could be the last big payday he gets for his career, it does hinder Miami, and it does. Giving Jimmy that money would hinder Miami's ability to contend in the future. On top of that, it really hinders their financial flexibility, and you don't want to really hinder yourself getting into the first or even maybe the second apron for Jimmy Butler in his mid-30s. Because Miami's whole thing is that they want to, even if they're losing and maybe not having, championship aspirations, they want to stay competitive. They don't rebuild. Pat Riley doesn't even really believe in that concept. So boldly saying we're not going to trade Jimmy initially puts the Miami Heat front office in a very unique position. They basically had to do one or two things, and neither which they wanted to do. They either had to trade a lot of the roster to get Jimmy that second star he needs, but it's gonna gut a lot of their depth, which is what they've been kind of making these finals runs off of for a second star. And now you need both those two to basically be their best versions of themselves all the time to make deep playoff runs, and which means you have to pay both those stars anyway when free agency comes around, or you let Jimmy Butler walk in free agency for nothing, and after expecting him to put another heroic performance to get them by in an even more competitive Eastern Conference. I understand Jimmy's frustration as well, because he's putting a lot of pain in to get the most out of these rosters. Every star that they could have gotten in free agency, because especially once you have a guy like Jimmy, he's showing that he can do that stuff. You gotta, at bare minimum, make the phone calls. You gotta at least try a lot. You gotta try as much as you can to get him the help he needs. Get him that second star, because realistically, you can't, unless outside of very few outliers, if you want to win a championship, you have to have that second star on the team. You kind of need to have at least a top 10 and top 20 player on the team at any given time, or at least if you only have one of those players, everybody needs to play their role almost perfectly without any leeway. Jimmy having to constantly put in as much as he can, playing these high minutes, high usage at his age. It would have been better to get a Donovan Mitchell or a Bradley Beal or a Kevin Durant to take that load off, especially when those games slow down and the playoff games slow down, and you need someone to just kind of work their own offense without needing elaborate sets to get that offense. It just didn't happen. They basically always swung and missed on anybody they could have, on any talent. Hell, there was a rumor that Pat Riley slept through one of the trade deadlines. So it showed me in the eyes of Jimmy, it showed that Pat Riley really didn't really see the vision of this Miami Heat roster the way that he saw it. And he wasn't willing to give up on his homegrown talent that he drafted out of ego. Who knows? Because in whether it was not wanting to trade Tyler Hero, not wanting to trade Nikola Jovic, not wanting to trade Jaime Jaquez. Those guys are all good players, and they have great futures in the NBA. Tyler Hero's an all-star, but they're not going to be enough in a playoff setting. And maybe they will be one day, but they're truly not right now with Jimmy's timeline. And it seemed like Pat Riley, even with Jimmy making these finals, was choosing the later stages, the into the decade after Jimmy, than the right now with Jimmy. Even this season, in the limited time that Jimmy has actually been on the court for Miami Heat, their offense is amazing when Jimmy's on the court with Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. But as soon as Jimmy sits, their offense stagnates a lot. Especially since Bam is kind of, to standards, he's having a bit of a down season. And Tyler Hero has had an uptick, but Hero is really the only sense of offense that this team can generate without really calling, like I said, a lot of plays to get that offense. It puts Pat Riley in a situation, because Jimmy knows that this team can't be the best version of themselves without him. So all that talk of they still think they can, make some noise in the East, just sounds like talk. Maybe it was truly meant to end like this. This is the third team that Jimmy has kind of been dismissed by in some dramatic fashion. And it's definitely the messiest. It's not because of he believed that the players aren't working hard enough, or maybe fear of the temperament, which is why the Minnesota and Philly experiments ended the way they did, respectfully. It's because maybe he didn't believe that Miami valued him the way that he was valuing Heat culture. But then again, this is Pat Riley. Pat Riley is the same guy who let Dwayne Wade walk. He didn't budge on the demands of guys like Shaq, Alonzo Mourning, LeBron, and the aforementioned Wade. So you have to understand that these teams need to play 100, at least in the case of Pat Riley. I understand that, these teams, even with Jimmy Butler playing his best, they had to play at 100% efficiency with little leeway to win series and get into the finals and to potentially win a championship, but then constantly be overmatched when they got there. Meaning that any trade for a star would mean gutting an already fragile roster to its already breaking point. And now you have to rely even more on Jimmy and that second star to kind of pick up the slack for not having enough depth. That's what's currently happening in Phoenix right now, and they're paying for it. Riley's unique way with handling stars and overall player personnel, and Jimmy's unique way of handling with people should have showed that this would have ended. We should have seen this crash from a mile away. Is basically what I'm trying to say. Even subtracting Jimmy wanting to leave Miami, trading Jimmy would have been easier said than done due to his age, injuries, contract, temperament. But also, since Jimmy's on an expiring deal, any team that's trading for him would have to sign him to the max to keep him around, and mortgaging a lot of your financial future on a guy who's going to be turning 37 towards the end of 37 or 38 years old at the end of that contract is risky. Due to the first and second apron rules anyway, a team would have to be in a very unique situation to want to bring in Jimmy Butler. The only team that can easily trade Jimmy would be the Phoenix Suns, and trading Bradley Beal, because that's how the money works the best. But two things, and for the most part, Bradley Beal has been playing relatively well this season, given the situation that he's in Phoenix. But even though he's playing well, he's not playing $51 million a year well. If he gets traded to Miami, he's essentially just a slightly older, slightly worse version of Tyler Hero. And then 3, miraculously, he has a no trade clause. So if he doesn't want to be traded, it seems like Phoenix has been trying to get him to drop the no trade clause, and it just isn't working. And even after after the second suspension, Pat Riley just lowering the demands for Jimmy Butler trade. I'm assuming they were expecting at least a first round pick and a pretty quality young player, or a budding all-star type of player. It still would have been hard to trade Jimmy because, like I said, you still need that team that is both crazy enough and kind of desperate enough to meet the demands of what Pat Riley's looking for and what Jimmy's asking for. And that's where the Warriors come into play, because the Warriors this season have been a disaster. They started hot, but then the whole team just cooled off, and nobody on this team not named Steph Curry can create a shot for themselves or create enough space on the court to let Steph Curry kind of operate. Like I said, a lot of the players that they've banked the future on, and kind of that we're building up this 2-timeline system, which I talked about in one of my older videos, they either have not taken the necessary jumps that they feel comfortable with, or they've certainly just not improved and maybe even regressed in certain sections of their game. The role players that they brought in, especially after the Klay Thompson deal, after Klay Thompson left, I should say, they have either, like I said, not been the adequate help, or they just cooled off a lot. And even the trade that they did to bring in Dennis Schroeder hasn't really worked out. Dennis Schroeder hasn't really matched the same production he was doing in Brooklyn, in Golden State, and that was obviously going to be the case because he's going to have the ball less, but it just didn't materialize enough. So it leaves the Warriors in a very vulnerable situation and leaves Steph Curry, who's now 36 years old, in a very vulnerable situation. Now he has to do more work with less spacing than he's ever had to do before. And he's still getting older. To the standards that Steph Curry has put on himself, he's having a really down season. Even to last year's standards, he's having a down season. That's only being outdone by his early years in the NBA. So because, as I said earlier, nobody on the team can generate their own kind of spacing and gravity and can pull defenders away, they can kind of load up on Curry. So a lot of these shots he's taking more shots less open now than he ever really had to do before. And even the gravity that Steph Curry can bring to the court because he's Steph Curry, it doesn't matter because nobody on the team can consistently hit shots. Nobody on the team can put enough pressure on the rim, and nobody on the team is that much of a threat with the ball in their hands as a creator, as a facto creator, as a playmaker. So it leaves Steph Curry with not a lot of options on that offensive end, and like I said, that's where the best versions of Steph Curry come from. Because it's not like you're gonna get that production from the defensive side of the ball too. And it has showed since he's having a more inefficient season than he's really has had in previous years. Like I said, only dating back to when he was early in the NBA. With them currently being out of the playoffs and even not really in the play-in, and Steve Kerr even just sounding like he's given up and kind of defeated in the media, it made sense now to hastily scrap the 2-timeline system and try to get that second star. Or that second viable option as a scorer. They've tried for the last few years to get a star player, but I think they've kind of wanted to scrap the 2-timeline system, but maybe not, because they want to hold out hope, I'm assuming, because it explains not being able to get Pascal Siakam, not being able to get Paul George last year, didn't 100% commit on Brandon Ingram. Adding that Kuminga is also due for a contract extension after his rookie deal, and they haven't really been totally clear on if they want to give him one. And Steph's age meant that time is just not on their side right now. People were looking at a Levine deal before he was a part of the De'Aaron Fox trade. I thought that KD would be the best player. I even predicted that maybe KD would get traded to the Warriors before KD said, "Yeah, I ain't really feeling all that." These guys have even teased a LeBron deal. Shit, they teased a LeBron and KD deal before Luka changes those plans. Let's put it like that. Luka changed that. I didn't say this earlier, but when Jimmy was saying, "No, I don't want to be traded to this team. No, I don't want to go to this team," there's 2 teams he specifically said no to. The Memphis Grizzlies, which is funny, and the Golden State Warriors. And he still was adamant that he didn't want to get traded to Golden State. But once a team's willing to pay you $54 and $56 million over the next 2 years after this year where you're making $49 million, I changed my tone too. It feels that nobody was really trying to pay Jimmy that money. And the Warriors are the only team that's desperate enough, crazy enough, and maybe a little stupid enough to really do this. But the Warriors have one thing that many teams don't have when it comes to trading for Jimmy Butler, and that's Steph Curry. The Warriors are another team that prides itself on work ethic and the mentality buy-in of all the players and staff. And that and team talent and roster construction has allowed for their dynasty to be able to take form and their lone championship in 2022. This team has built their success through data-driven roster construction, sacrifice from everyone, and that everyone being committed to getting the best out of each other. But this West is really tough, and the production of his teammates and Steph's age, you need a real co-star. And in this deal, the real move was trading Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, and Kyle Anderson on a 5-team deal. I'm only going to focus on the Warriors and maybe even the Heat. Wiggins is a good player, and he can even hit a solid year in Miami. He's at the point where now I think he's a better defender than Jimmy is, at least at this rate right now, and slightly a better shooter. And he keeps them just competitive, and they can do basically similar stuff that they're running. Obviously not the same on-ball creation, and I don't really believe the same rim pressure, but they can do 60% of the things that they were doing with Jimmy Butler with Wiggins. And that can still give Bam Adebayo, still give Tyler Hero more control of the offense, give more opportunities to guys like Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez. Jaquez is having a bit of a down. I think he's having a bit of a down year in Miami. That's what I've heard. Adding in that they traded for Davion Mitchell as well. Don't know why Toronto did that, but they traded for Davion Mitchell. This team can at least have a very good defensive identity, and they can keep the ship going of, being competitive until further notice. And Kyle Anderson, for the most part, can, after actually being able to stay in Miami, if he comes in for 10-15 minutes, he can swing a quarter or two. The playmaking, the shooting, that it could help. I'm not really expecting much out of that, but solid 10-15 minutes, not bad. The Pistons get Lindy Waters III and Dennis Schroeder from Golden State, and Dennis Schroeder has been traded I think 3 times in this one trade alone. I actually, for all the games I've seen of the Warriors, I like Lindy Waters. He's a solid contributor off the bench. His shooting, the on-ball play, on-ball creation. I think he could be really solid in Detroit right now, even especially now with Jaden Ivey not being there and not being there due to injury. Although Golden State tenure didn't work out, I think Dennis Schroeder provides a little more of a stable on-ball presence as well, especially in lineups where he's maybe with the second units like Malik Beasley and them. I think the Pistons came out pretty well in this trade, so shout out to them. The Jazz get KJ Martin and Josh Richardson. Good for them. I think I'm still relatively positive on KJ Martin, but it's kind of a weird logjam in Utah right now. So they're just getting talent and assets. So it's not bad. The Raptors got nothing really. To talk about the Warriors, to put credit on them, they've done people have kind of forgotten that when Jimmy's on the court, he's been very productive. He's getting to the rim more in limited sets, I should mind, but he's getting to the rim more. He's more efficient. And the Warriors' biggest gaps are having a guy who can comfortably have the ball in his hands, can take some of the eyes away from Steph Curry, take some of that gravity, can put some of the gravity onto himself to let Curry roam a little bit free. And in the games I've watched of Jimmy, that's kind of what's happening. And admittedly, the minutes that he's playing with Kuminga have also been really good too. I actually think that the defense can still even see a slight improvement. Just like that lineup between Kuminga, Butler, and Draymond, and then Kevon Looney, that's a very solid defensive core. There's a lot of off-ball stuff they can do with Jimmy Butler as well. And and those off-ball movements can be even better because Steph Curry's on the team. It's a big difference when you're going from Tyler Hero to Curry. And also, it helps that with the ball in his hand, Jimmy has a pretty low turnover rate for a guy who has a very high usage. So he can create the space that Steph needs to just be Steph. Just give him more of a chance to breathe. Let's just say that. And everything I just said gets boosted up like another 10 points when it comes to April, May, and June. Occurred to have different offensive looks because everything I just said. They could also play spoiler to teams like the Rockets or the Grizzlies, who don't have much playoff experience, depending on how much you take that into consideration, and even take a top-seeded team like the Thunder and make them sweat a little bit. This trade still has risks that you have to play in consideration. Jimmy Butler availability, him staying healthy, that could be something that you have to look at. The regular season demands, also something like he has to care about the regular season. There's also a big question on Steve Kerr and a lot of that offense, because out of all the players they put next to Curry, Jimmy is probably like the worst shooter out of all of them. He's not a natural shooter, which means having a big man rotation of essentially Looney and Draymond can make it tough to really move around. Even though the defense I think can still be good, because I think everyone I just mentioned between Kuminga, Butler, Green, and Looney, I think they're all really smart defenders. Jimmy isn't the same defender, and I think the consensus now is that this trade doesn't really do enough. That's how me and my homie were saying. Like, me and my homie were on the phone, we talking about this, and it kind of just brought up that it's not really enough. Especially in the West, it's very loaded. Especially West that now has the Lakers that can be viable threats. The Mavericks, at least in the short term, can be viable threats. And the Spurs are also, I think the Spurs have a shot at being a way better team right now. They essentially added De'Aaron Fox and kept all of their young guys and a lot of their depth that they've been relying on this season. They're still long, like everything I'm saying is that they're still long shots in the Western Conference. But maybe that's looking at it too narrowly. Maybe that's looking at it too arrogantly, ignorantly. They still have a lot of their young core, like Podzinski and Kuminga, so they can either bank on them, getting better in this new Warriors, or they can make another deal that can help the team out in the last chapter of Steph Curry's career. Steph Curry and Draymond Green. But the most important message that this trade is doing for the Warriors, for Steph Curry, for Warriors fans, is that they're giving their best player and their best players a chance. They're giving them a chance to really do something. They're holding up their end of the bargain. Yes, it would be ideal to have a perfect situation and a perfect road line to the finals, like a team like the Boston Celtics, the Oklahoma City Thunder, in a way. But, and even to a certain extent, a team like New York. But if the last couple years of the NBA Finals have showed us anything, that you don't need the circumstances to be perfect in order to make something shake. It wasn't perfect for the Miami Heat in 2020 or 2023. You need perfect efficiency from your players, and you just need to get lucky. When Jimmy was in Miami, the team had to basically be always on their P's and Q's because luck wasn't really always on their side. But sometimes the best luck is the ones that you make. And the best luck, and having the luck of having a top 10 player in the history of basketball that's still averaging 23 a game on like still decent to really good efficiency. Because as I said that Steph Curry was more inefficient now this season than he's been in previous years, he's still, one of the most important factors of his game is his three-point shooting, and he's still, even having a down year, is shooting 39% from three. That's still better than like players' best years from three. You still have Draymond Green, who's one of the better defenders, one of the best defenders of his generation, one of the best defenders, one of the smartest defenders in NBA history. All that being said, that is the luck. That's the luck. And if there's one guy that can turn any even sliver of luck into insanely high production and some very positive outcomes, it's the guy who's done it twice, and that's Jimmy Butler. So, yeah, that's what I think about this trade. It's kind of like a very loose mindset of it, but I think I'm kind of working on other stuff, so I don't have time to really like meticulous deep. I just wanted to get something out there. But all I'm gonna say is Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green in that same locker room. That enough makes this trade peak entertainment and something I'm interested in. Thank you for watching, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all soon.